So, Chapter 12, Food Preservation, Part 3. We're going to talk, or food safety, excuse me. We're going to talk here in Part 3 about food preservation. And I want to focus on the different types of food preserving methods, talk a little bit about the preservatives and additives that they put in foods, and then finish up by talking about what's called traveler's diarrhea and ways that you can avoid foodborne illness when traveling. So, the variety of food preservation methods that we have, you have heating, you have cooking, you have, or excuse me, heating, which is cooking or using any type of heat, whether it's low heat, which is pasteurization, or reaching that internal minimum temperature, which we talked about in part two, with actually cooking the food, using salt and sugar as preservatives, smoking, curing, chilling foods, drying, fermenting, canning, and irradiating. So let's go through each one real quick. The first one here, heating foods. This is probably one that most people are most familiar with because we're familiar with cooking. And this cooking, this heat source is what kills and or can kill or destroy pathogens and enzymes that cause this food spoilage. Okay, so um, when you cook a food, you are deactivating or killing or destroying that pathogen and or enzyme within that product, which makes it safe to eat at that time. If you do not eat it at that time, then it can continue to decay. And that we talked about that in part two with making sure food is held at the right temperature properly. Then we have adding salt or sugar. So not only does that add to flavor, but brining foods in a salt solution or curing foods in a type of sodium solution. But adding salt and water decreases the amount of microbes in the food, and it also binds with water to slightly dehydrate the food, not necessarily dehydrate it completely, but it does help to remove some of that moisture content to decrease that bacterial growth and microbe growth. Smoking also destroys microbes and destroys enzymes that result in food spoilage. So that is a technique that's kind of coming back now. And then curing, okay, curing foods such as adding sodium nitrate to the foods does help reduce the pathogens as well. Chilling and or freezing does not destroy bacteria like cooking would, but it does slow down that molecular movement and kind of retard that growth or slow that micro microbial growth, excuse me. And then, of course, drying and dehydrating, been around for thousands of years. Removing moisture from food, you're removing one of those required elements for microbes to survive. So you're removing that water. And then, of course, fermentation, another ancient process used in preserving food over time, produces the acids and or the alcohol that interfere with that survival of microbes. So that fermentation, such as your pickles, your sauerkrauts, your alcohols, your ales, those types of things. When it comes to home canning, this is kind of a lost art that's coming back, which I'm happy to see. I do a lot of home canning or have in the past, but you do have to be careful with it, and you kind of have to know what you're doing. It is a way of preserving food by heating the food in this contained jar, as you see here, with the specialized lids and bands, your lids and bands that have to do with how the food is uh, preserved and how the jar eventually seals, um, preventing that, or excuse me, removing the oxygen and causing certain microbes not to be able to survive. Okay. So, but you need to understand you have what's called low acid foods and high acid foods. So, your low acid foods are your ones that are very high in starch, such as your corn, your beans, your potatoes, your rice, that kind of thing, green beans. The only real low acid food that I would ever can was going to be green beans. And even then, I would add lemon juice to it and make the water a little bit more acidic just to ensure um, we're uh, you're taking away that low acidity aspect to it. Did not change the uh, quality of the food or the flavor of the food, but it gave me a little bit more self-assurance as well as following the proper instructions of canning that food. So I'm all into home canning, but just make sure you know what you're doing. Maybe take a class on it. Call your local cooperative extension agency to make sure you're getting the right information. Then there's food irradiation. This is preserving food by high amounts of energy going on the food to kill pathogens. And this is done more in the food industry to help preserve food, excuse me. It is not the same as radioactive, so it's not that type of dangerous radiation. Okay, this is irradiation, which preserves foods for a longer shelf life. I'm sure if you look on the food labels, I'm sure you've all eaten irradiated foods. It's more common than you think. When we look at disasters, you want to make sure that you are prepared. And these are just some general guidelines that everyone should follow. Make sure in your home, say like for power outages or, winter storms, when you might have the power go out, make sure you have at least 1 gallon of water per person per day, potable water. Okay. This has to be water that person can drink and to keep at least a 3 to 4 day supply of water on hand so that, and make sure you have extra water for preparing food, personal hygiene for your pets, your animals, that kind of thing. Good potable water that needs to be changed out, excuse me, every 6 months. Right? Use your bathtub if you have a chance to fill that for your non-potable needs, such as flushing the toilet and watering plants and that kind of thing, if need be. Also, when you're looking at a food supply, make sure you're storing at least a 3 day supply for people in your home. And the best things here are those that are shelf stable. So your canned foods, your dried foods, foods that can be prepared, such as dried beans, rice, legumes that are dried or canned that just need to be heated up and consumed, or boiled with that potable water we just talked about. When we look at food additives, a food additive is any substance that is incorporated in the food, okay, during production, packaging, transport, or storage. Sometimes it can be intentional, sometimes it is not intentional. So, direct or intentional additives, these are your preservatives, your sweeteners, your emulsifiers, your flavors, your color additives, and this is has been under a lot of scrutiny lately with the new dietary guidelines, and they're going to continue to be scrutinized. There is a list of updated food additives that are currently being reviewed, and um, it's a good list to review. And actually, it's in my opinion, it's been long overdue for quite a while. You also have indirect additives. These are foods, or excuse me, additives that enter the food but have no real purpose. So, such as an aluminum wrapper, leaching aluminum, or the microplastics that come from the plastic containers, that kind of thing. All of these are highly regulated by the FDA. There is Food Additive Amendment from 1958, which required food manufacturers to provide evidence that this new food additive was safe to use in their product. And then you have grass, generally recognized as safe. This is a list of ingredients that have been used before 1958 that were considered by a set board of experts to be safe. This is another list that is currently being, or at least discussed as far as being updated is this long list of generally recognized as safe additives. So be on the lookout for that over the next few years. You have the Delaney Clause here, which was a component of the 1958 Food Additive Amendment that made it illegal for manufacturers to add cancer-causing compounds to any food at any level of food intake. So not knowingly adding carcinogens to foods. And then you have the Food Quality Protection Act here. All of these are to try to establish the safe standards and make sure that we are reasonably certainty, that we have reasonable certainty that the food will not cause harm. There again, that is being debated and being reviewed as it should be. You know, food science is a science. It is constantly growing. We're constantly having new additives and chemicals, and we're learning more about the metabolic processes and nutrition every day. So it should be updated. It's not a static science by any means. And that kind of goes along here with pesticides. The FDA does not permit adulterated foods to be sold, but define that term adulterated, right? Some people, the whole organic movement has been exploding recently due to the increased use of GMO foods, pesticides, non chemical methods of processing foods, and so forth. So you see here the different types of pesticides used for their supposed benefit here to either reduce rodents, herbs, fungi, insects, that kind of thing. And the EPA is the one that sets those standards. And there again, it's constantly changing. Uh, a growing, you have a growing list of non-chemical methods of controlling pests. So this is that whole organic movement that's growing. So using natural predatory insects, using crop rotation, pest-resistant crops, and that kind of thing for helping reduce the need for pesticides. GMO foods have come a long way in that, but there again, GMO, genetically modified, there's good and bad with that as well. And I think we talked about that in an earlier chapter. Okay, we know the benefits of pesticides, how, yes, they can help protect the food supply, make crops more available, more productive per acre. But you have what's known here as the pesticide pathway that you need to watch out for as well. The unwanted effects of how pesticides get passed to humans and the environment. Okay, the pesticides applied to crops are going to remain in the soil. They're taken up by the plant roots. The animals eat the plants. We eat the animals. The pesticides are carried away by the wind, enter groundwater, waterways, those kind of things. And each one of these paths can unwittingly be a route, excuse me, that can eventually lead to our food chain. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about what's known as traveler's diarrhea. Kind of a fun topic to end on, isn't it? This is what can happen when people travel and they have GI upset due to contaminated water source or contaminated foods and eating bacteria and pathogens that your gut is not used to and or coming sick with a foodborne illness. So how can we prevent this? So you have what's known as generally safe to eat. The ones here on the left are going to be your foods that are safer to eat, and let's look at why. Okay, notice that they are pre-packaged, meaning they're going to be pasteurized dairy product, or they're going to be canned, which means they have been heated. So that good method of food preservation. Notice the food temperature here. You're making sure you're above that minimum 165 zone for chicken. Foods that are cooked and served hot. You see the grill marks here on the corn on the cob. Your dry foods, your hard cooked foods, your eggs. Here, your hard boiled egg instead of a raw egg. Your bottled water instead of tap water. Not having beverages with ice, okay, because you don't know where that ice may have come from. And making sure you're drinking hot tea or coffee that has been boiled, okay, and served hot to reduce the risk of contaminated water there as well. And notice the only raw foods on this are foods that have either come in have a skin, okay, like these cherry tomatoes or this banana, okay? So in general, watch what you eat when you are traveling. Make sure you have a good water supply, water source. And if you're going to like another country, um, make sure you investigate their food safety procedures there. Okay. All right. Please let me know if you have any questions.